When I say we talk college football 24/7, 365, I mean 24/7, 365, meaning 24 hours around the clock. It is 1 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're just getting started here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome into a big conclusion to the NFL Draft Day 1. And I guarantee right now, whomever is watching, I don't know how many people have jumped on the line this late, but also this early in the show, because it typically takes 10 or 15 minutes for the crowd to gather. How many of you are on the line, regardless of how many? I guarantee that everybody who's watching right now knows more about what happened in the first round of the NFL draft. So your host, Mr. College Football, voice of college football, and a big NFL fan, and one-time NFL expert, knowing all the rosters, all the personnel, all the data, all the statistics and so forth. At one time, I was working at the location, not the actual location where the NFL draft was, Nashville, but the location of the broadcast center of the NFL draft. But you all know far, far more about what happened at the NFL draft tonight than I do. So I was not in tune to the actual football side of the NFL draft production. I was in tuned from the operational standpoint. So in regards to the football, you were going to teach me. I am flying by the seat of my pants. Now, that is no different than what we experience here on a daily basis here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. As you know, I'm ready to talk football regardless of what kind of preparation I have. But tonight, it's basically I am reading through the draft picks, and certainly I saw a number of draft picks. I know that the first three were boom, 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 and I know Dwayne Haskins went to Washington and some other selections along the way. But pick by pick by pick, I'm going to march through the picks, and you're going to let me know what you think about the NFL draft selections. And, of course, I'm going to give you my analysis. If you're stumbling across on a late night, on a Thursday night, Friday morning, you're stumbling across YouTube just looking for something to watch, and you've found your college football home right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Lock it in. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the videos. Help us build the channel. And, of course, for you old-timers, continue to do what you do best, and that's, of course, populate the live chat with the best live chat discussion and banter and wit and discussion and debate in college football, online, anywhere. And then, of course, I will do the rest. So let's check it out. I'm going to run through the first round. Of course, number 1 to Arizona is Kyler Murray, quarterback from Oklahoma. Number 2, Nick Bosa, Ohio State defensive end, to San Francisco. Number 3, the Jets selected Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle, Alabama. Pick number 4, Clelin Ferrell, not Farrell, I believe is what the commissioner, Roger Goodell, stated in announcing the Raiders' first-round selection of Clelin Ferrell from Clemson. To round out the top 5, we've got Devin White, linebacker, LSU, going to Tampa Bay. At 6, the first stunner of the draft, Daniel Jones, Duke quarterback, going to the New York Giants. Many of us had assumed for months and months and months the New York Giants, needing to replace Eli Manning, would select Dwayne Haskins. We have found out over the last several weeks that the Giants' barometer, their opinion, their evaluation of Dwayne Haskins has plummeted for whatever reason. And it was proven out tonight as they select the Duke quarterback, Daniel Jones. And I've got to credit a longtime guest and contributor here, Mike McDaniel from Inside the ACC, for being really the first person that I heard talk about Daniel Jones in that kind of context, that kind of light as a future NFL quarterback. And this wasn't last season. This wasn't the season before. It was probably 2016 that Mike was talking about Daniel Jones in the light of an NFL career. All right, with pick number 7, Jacksonville takes edge rusher Josh Allen of Kentucky. At number 8, it's TJ Hawkinson, the Iowa tight end, goes to Detroit. What's interesting about this selection from a Iowa standpoint is that Noah Fant was, for the most part of his career, the playmaker and the guy considered to be the projected NFL star out of Iowa at the tight end position. And Hawkinson was a main contributor and producer on the field, but it was only the latter portion of last season, moving into the offseason workouts and all the testing, in which Hawkinson passed Noah Fant by as being the number one tight end at Iowa in terms of NFL draft projections. And he goes number 8 to Detroit. At number 9, Ed Oliver to Buffalo, defensive tackle from Houston. Oliver was, by most calculations, expected to be the number 1 overall selection in the 2018 draft had he come out. And to round out the top 10, we've got Devin Bush, Michigan linebacker, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right. Jonah Williams, offensive tackle from Alabama, going to Cincinnati at 11. Number 12 is Rashawn Gary, defensive end, Michigan, to Green Bay. The Miami Dolphins selected at number 13, taking Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, Clemson. Pick number 14 is Chris Lindstrom, Atlanta Falcons, taking the guard out of Boston College. So this is the first selection in which, years down the road, is anyone going to know, unless he's out of the league, is anyone going to know whether the Falcons made a strong selection in selecting Chris Lindstrom from Boston College? No, only real NFL nerds who look beyond the stats, who grind it down, who look on websites that evaluate guards. Unless this kid is making Pro Bowls year after year after year, we're not going to know if this was a good selection by the Atlanta Falcons. The general football public is not going to know, as a guard, if Chris Lindstrom from Boston College, a good selection by the Atlanta Falcons, unless, of course, he's going to Pro Bowls. At the 14th overall selection as a guard, he needs to be one of the top 2 to 4 guards in the NFL for hopefully 10 years. All right. At pick number 15, Dwayne Haskins fell to Washington, quarterback, Ohio State. Pick number 16, Brian Burns, good one, edge rusher, Florida State, going to Carolina. The New York Giants selected at number 17 as well, Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle from Clemson. That's the 3 Clemson players off the board, correct? Yes. At 18, we've got Garrett Bradbury, center, North Carolina State, going to Minnesota. With pick number 19, Tennessee selects Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle from Mississippi State. Some analysts actually had him rated as the number 1 overall player. In terms of just a talent perspective, Jeffrey Simmons had the issue in high school in which he attacked or defended, based on your perspective, the possible attacker or combatant of his sister. And we saw the video on ESPN tonight. Pick number 20, the Iowa Hawkeyes had 2, not just picks in the top 20, they had 2 tight ends selected in the top 20 of the 2019 NFL Draft, with Noah Fant going to Denver. Pick number 21, Darnell Savage, safety from Maryland, going to Green Bay. Pick number 22 is Philadelphia taking Andre Dillard, tackle, Washington State. With the 23rd selection of the first round, we've got Titus Howard going to Alabama State, tackle, to Houston. Okay. I made the comment to Rick Saratella earlier this week from the NFL Draft Bible. I'm always intrigued to see what player and what selection, how long is it going to take in the NFL Draft for there to be a player selected that I've never heard of? And I'm not cheating here, because I could say that technically I knew about Titus Howard, because in our NFL Draft previews with Rick Saratella from the NFL Draft Bible, he talked about Titus Howard. So I knew about him because of Rick. But I mean, legitimately knew, watched him play, knew of, was aware of, and had knowledge of the player in question. It usually takes about 40 picks. But this season, just pick number 23, Titus Howard, Alabama State. Of course, we don't cover Alabama State here at the Voice of College Football. Pick number 24, Josh Jacobs, the first running back taken, Alabama back to Oakland. Pick number 25, Baltimore. Marquise Hollywood Brown, wide receiver, Oklahoma. Pick number 26, Montez Sweat. Along that defensive front at Mississippi State goes to Washington. Another Mississippi State defender. That makes 3 in the top 27. Safety, Jonathan Abram going to Oakland. San Diego with pick number 28 takes Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle from Notre Dame. Pick number 29 is L.J. Collier, TCU defensive end, going to Seattle. And then to round out the first round, pick number 30 to the Giants, DeAndre Baker, corner, Georgia. Washington tackle Caleb McGarry goes to Atlanta at pick number 31. And finally, wide receiver N'Keal Harry, Arizona State, taken by the New England Patriots. So there was a thought that we wouldn't see any wide receivers taken in the first round. We actually had 2, with Marquise Brown going to Baltimore and N'Keal Harry taken by New England. There you go. Let's check out the live chat. Hopefully, all of you out there had a fun first round of the NFL draft. All right, let's see what we got. Here we go. George! What a freaking day. Okay. Prince 6'1". Let's go! George, if the NFL ever does that again, I will never, ever watch the draft again. That was a little bit ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about, George. Prince, break down top 3 conferences. SEC 9, ACC 7, Big 12. Sorry, SEC 9, ACC 7, Big 10 7. So Prince has done my work for me. You guys know I love to compare the conferences. That's what I was going to do, was add up how many players were selected in the first round from each conference. So those 3 conferences take up 23 of the top 32 picks. Again, that's 9 to the SEC, 7 to the Big 10 and the ACC. George, but other than that, everything is great. Prince, players drafted. Okay, don't know what that means. George, Florida didn't have a number 1 draft choice in the first round. That's very unusual. I feel sorry for Taylor because he got all the hype. Jawan Taylor is who George is referring to. All right. Taylor's good, first round talent. Okay, this happens every year because of fit, because of different circumstances, where a player has first round type talent, but he falls. Other guys are plucked away from a second or third round status into the first round because of need. It rarely happens. It happens with 2 or 3 players each year. If we selected or went through and charted all the players who have first round talent, it would be like 55 guys. So they can't all be drafted in the first round. And yes, Jawan Taylor was projected to be a first rounder by many. Texans or Seahawks should have grabbed him. All right. Yeah, George, let's say who's up late tonight. Prince wants to call in. Of course you can call in. 860-325-3687. I am putting it in the chat right as we speak. 860-325-3687. I kills on the line. George is not going to call in. Number 1, ND fan, Julian Love, really getting overlooked. Interesting. D. Barrett in the house. Yes, Prince, the commissioner, and that's just basically common sense that MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yo, it's Deep Barat. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Lovely, lovely. just wanted to get your thoughts and analysis on the quarterbacks that have been taken in the draft so far. Do you think that Haskins would be a good fit in Washington?
Well, I don't know that anyone's a good fit at Washington right now based on what little I know of the Washington Redskins. So again, you got to consider that for years and years and years and years, I knew at least as much about the NFL as I did about college football and the personnel on each team. Now, for me to sit here and try to remember, you got Josh Doxson on the outside playing for Washington. They've got the Florida tight end, Jordan Reed. But to think of Washington personnel on the outside and how well they're going to complement Dwayne Haskins, I know.
So they plan to start Haskins next year as starting quarterback. Obviously, I mean, as a huge Texas fan, I mean, Colt McCoy was the starter for the Redskins.
Yep.
A good chunk of the year last year.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're planning next
by
year,
default, he was the starter. He wasn't the true starter. By injury, he was the starter. He's not the starter. Alex Smith is the starter, or was the starter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is true. But both of them are gone now because both of them have season-ending injuries for next year as well. And Haskins got drafted, man, 15th. So the GM of the Redskins said in an interview after the draft saying that they plan to start Haskins immediately. So I don't know if you saw the draft or you actually saw Haskins' reaction when he got rejected by the Giants. But his interview afterwards, man, I mean, he seems ready to play ball. He wants to take some revenge on the Giants already. And they're the same division. They play twice next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that rivalry goes. I mean, I know this isn't an NFL channel or anything like that, but it's going to be an interesting showdown between the Giants and the Redskins in the coming years and whether or not they'll live to regret that decision.
Oh, believe me, I've thought about making it an NFL channel or having an NFL channel, but go ahead.
Oh, so you're also an NFL fan. Is that correct, kind of?
So if you were listening to me just about 30 seconds ago, Deeper Rod, I stated that there was a time for a long period of my life when I knew more about the NFL than, I don't want to say just about anybody walking, but certainly more than as much as I did about college football. There wasn't a player in the NFL I didn't know. Knew everybody's roster, everybody's stats, everything. Yes.
Oh, interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I think also you mentioned a very interesting point on the conference breakdown. I think it's going to be interesting that, obviously the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC, these are the three big dominant conferences. The Big 12 had a few guys, but I mean, even as a diehard Texas fan, and even as a Big 12 supporter, I kind of knew it was coming because, to be honest with you, I mean, aside from Oklahoma and recently Texas, there hasn't been any breakout superstar in the Big 12, but also just superstar caliber players in the Big 12. And that's to say it's not going to happen in coming years. It's just this particular cycle has been a downward trend. Aside from the Oklahoma, they had a very good first-round draft. As much as I hate to say it, they did get Marquise Brown drafted, which is the first wide receiver, I believe, that was taken in the draft. Maybe second.
Yeah, he was number one.
Number one in this particular draft. So, yeah, yes. I mean, it's definitely a huge encouragement or no surprise that Big 12 offensive players are taken. But you look at conferences and you compare this quality of players in different conferences. As much as we hate to say it, right? I mean, the SEC is still reigning supreme, and I think that that's probably going to be the trend for probably at least the next coming cycle as well. Considering Alabama, Georgia's recruiting classes and how they've kind of stemmed and groomed that system, but Clemson had quite a few guys as well. I think two guys at least, from what I can recall, two guys in the first round. So they had a pretty good overall round. Other than that, last question I had is, what are your thoughts on tomorrow? And the only, position that I'm kind of very curious about is the quarterback position. Some of these analysts were saying that only two quarterbacks are going to be taken in this draft that are, legitimate quarterback caliber talent. I mean, obviously there's been three taken so far, but Who do you think is like the next coming batch of quarterbacks taken?
Well, I don't think there's any question that Drew Lock is a guy that could have been taken late in the first round, and is a guy that has an NFL arm. And you talk about a guy that talks as though he's ready to go and ready to play. He certainly talks big, and I don't say that in a negative way. I think he's an extremely confident guy who got a ton of reps at Missouri. He started for 4 years. He usually had marginal, and this is a pretty big test for some of these guys, like a Daniel Jones, like a Drew Lock, and especially Jones, but also Drew Lock, but he had better playmakers for the most part around him. They had to deal with situations in which they typically had the same, or many times throughout the conference schedule, inferior talent to their opponents, as opposed to a Dwayne Haskins or a Kyler Murray, who had the best supporting cast versus the defense they were playing. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it in regards to making an adjustment to the next level. Being comfortable with having less talent on your team than the opposite team, rather than having a buffer or security blanket or that luxury of having better talent around you. But I definitely think that Drew Lock is the best quarterback available.
Your thoughts? Do you think he's going to be drafted anywhere high?
Well, I'm not an NFL draft guy. I love watching the draft, but I don't scout the teams, and I don't know who's looking for what. So I really have no opinion on that. I just don't have time to follow that. And I was never interested in that portion of the draft. It's like recruiting. I could care less that the number one player has listed 7 schools on his board as being the 7 schools. I just want to know on signing day who signed with who. That's all I need. I don't need to clutter my mind with 98% information that's going to be completely useless in 3 days. And that's what preparing for the NFL draft is basically cluttering your mind with information that's not going to be relevant, or it's not going to be factual in a couple days. So once they get drafted, then I will study the draft selections to kind of memorize who's going where and if they're a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason I brought it up is because you mentioned, what is that, Drew Lock. You didn't really mention Will Greer, which I think that it's going to be interesting to see who ends up getting drafted next. But ultimately, I think, when you get into the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I think people start to care a little bit less, I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's still going to be a high TV ownership. But other than that, man, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on in the world of sports at this moment.
Well, it depends what you like. Well, it depends what you like, Deeper Rod, because I used to hang out watching the NFL draft with buddies, and I thought it was one of the not for me personally, but for an overall sports fan, one of the more action-packed weekends, because you got the NFL draft. You always have baseball on. You've got NBA playoffs. You got NHL playoffs. So if you're a sports fan, if you're that kind of sports fan, then it's tough to keep track of the clicker and catch everything.
That is true. I will say this. I mean, I guess it's disappointing the Big 12 didn't have too many draft picks, but I mean, it is what it is for now, right? We kind of are a little bit light in the conference at the moment. Hopefully we get, a few good teams back in the Big 12, but I just think with 10 teams in the conference and just 2 real big powerhouses and everyone else kind of filling up the slots, I just don't see it happening now. I just don't see that.
So the situation there is pretty easy to track. We talk about this all the time when we talk recruiting. Any particular player can be a bust. Any particular player can come out of nowhere. But when you talk about the quantity of stats, the quantitative portion of it, meaning the mass numbers, well, they tell the story and they're very accurate. And the Big 12 in recent years, really held up by Oklahoma, number 1, and then Texas, 2nd. If you take those 2 teams away from the conference, it just flattens out to nearly nothing. But if you're talking about top recruits, 5- and 4-star recruits going to the Big 12 versus the other conferences, they're lagging behind. Well, what that typically tells us 3 to 4 years later is those numbers translate to the NFL. And I know people go crazy about the recruiting rankings don't matter and the stars don't matter. Well, yeah, they do. And I have seen all sorts of charts and research and studies about NFL rosters and how many of those players were 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. And it's got the perfect curve that you would expect it to have. It ramps up like a hockey stick. Not that there aren't 2 and 3 stars playing in the NFL, but the most of the league is made up of 4 and 5 stars, especially considering how few 4 and 5 stars there are compared to the other players when they're in high school going into college. So it translates all the way through. The SEC recruits the best, and then they have the most players go to the NFL. There's a direct correlation there. Okay, unfortunately, you are all muffled and have been for a while.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. We'll have you on for.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. The point I wanted to mention for what you said there is also the quality of the coaching. Now, I don't want to say that the Big 12 coaches are bad because they're not bad at all, but the quality of the coaching has a direct correlation as well, in my opinion, with the draft of an NFL player or potential NFL player. And that has been kind of evident, right? I mean, I think Alabama has the most, I don't know if they have the most all-time number 1 draft picks.
No, Ohio State does.
Ohio
State and USC.
But I think in the last decade,
yes,
I believe that's the right stat.
Yep, it is.
Alabama has the most
absolutely
first-round draft picks. And that's purely because, obviously, the quality of Nick Saban as a head coach has been legendary.
Oh, it's not that I disagree with you, but I don't understand your point. So I don't disagree, but I also don't necessarily agree. I think that's a direct correlation to what I just explained. Who has had the number 1 recruiting class in the country all but 1 year over the last 9 or 10?
Oh, just
Alabama has. So those guys have just basically gone from being the best high school players to the best college players and then drafted.
But I will say this. I do think this next year, maybe not next decade, because we don't know how good Clemson is going to be, but Clemson is going to have more draft picks than ever in coming years, particularly with the quality of the recruiting classes that they have projected. I'm not saying they're going to have it, but projected recruiting that's going to happen in 2020 and onwards. Particularly the 2020 class is absolutely stacked. Since you mentioned recruiting, I just had to bring that up.
Okay.
I think they have 5 or 6 first 5-star players.
Sure.
It'll be interesting, man. I think that it's going to be a very interesting draft to see what the rest of the players get in.
Well, I am always intrigued by the draft. But all right, Deeparad, we appreciate the phone call.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Have a lovely rest of the day.
You as well.
Thanks.
All right, NFL draft tonight, and I see that MCD Sports 4. It's always difficult for me to remember where the 4 goes. MCD 4, MCD Sports 4. Anyway, it's MCD Sports 4, who watched the first 19 picks on ESPN. Then he got disgusted and turned it off. I don't know why we got disgusted, but I guess we'll find out. But it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Mark Rogers, this is Prince 601, buddy. What's up?
Hey, Prince, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, I got a question for you. What does 4 plus 13 equal?
4 plus 13 would be 17, I believe.
All 3 slots at Clemson and D lineman were taken.
Yes.
We got Farrell, number 4.
Sure.
Wilkins, 13, and then Big Dex at number 17. Not 2, unlike the last star said.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. No question.
I think D. Brock was whispering to his parents, didn't hear him, but we can speak up now and talk louder. Man, I gotta say though, Miami Dolphins, they got a steal, man. I think you got a big Miami fan base. Did you see Christian Williams try to chest bump Roger Goodell?
Oh, I did see that. That was funny. Grabbed him and yeah. The commissioner, I don't think poor Pete Rozelle or Paul Tagliabue would have been able to hold up to that. Roger Goodell's a pretty big guy, but yeah, he's got to take some punishment. And these greetings, they get even more and more violent every year.
Oh,
they used to just go up there and shake his hand.
That's just Christian Wilkins.
It is, yeah.
The character that guy brings is just contagious.
So will you watch these guys?
What now?
I was just going to say, if you're going to watch your Clemson guys in the NFL, if you care how well they do.
Yep. Oh, of course. Because that's a reflection of your program. Like, I think it matters because you got guys that want to come to university, obviously, to take the next step. And I don't know if you saw the other day, Clemson just got landed the #1 overall player in the 2020 class, according to 24/7 Sports. He was at our spring game. Pigskin P and Bobby Durkin. He's had them both on. And if you check out their channels, they went to the spring game. We all went together. So they did a vlog with all of us, and man, we had a good time. And all the former D linemen were there, and they were with Breezy and them, and DJ.
Very cool. Very cool.
Also, who was it? Vic Beasley was there, and Mike Williams were also there. So I think stuff like that matters for recruiting. Especially when you have guys that want to come back to your university.
Well, we've seen that work for Miami, or and I'm talking about in years gone by, to where that's really the first football program that I can remember that actually made it a big deal and publicized it. I'm sure that guys would come back to watch their alma mater, but they just wouldn't publicize it or make a big deal about it, or the school wouldn't embrace it and make sure that people knew about it. But you started to see at Miami more so in first than any other school that I can remember, having the Warren Sapps and the Michael Irvins and all those guys show up from the 80s and 90s, 5 and 10 years later.
That was during all those scandals though, right?
Well, depending on what you're talking about. Yeah, they've certainly had their share of scandals through the years. So, yeah.
I'm just firing shots at Miami right now.
Hey, anything you
can... one team, what did we find? We found out in 2002 they paid over $1 million for their players in 2001.
It's not a bad deal.
No wonder they had all those players drafted.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think it just means something to like that's part of the Clemson experience of the family atmosphere. I think Davo's kind of shown that on the national stage, and he's just a genuine guy. Like the Clemson family all came back. Deshaun Watson came back for the even a national championship game and was a co-captain of the team. Like I think that kind of matters, having that family environment together. If you look on actually on Twitter on CBS Sports, when Brian Breezy first announced that he was going to Clemson, the first guy that wished him luck was Vic Beasley on there. So I would argue that the family and that matters, man. Bro, these high school kids want to go to a college to these pro guys. I think it matters.
The PED, I should say, and I'm going to excuse myself for anything that I state tonight that is not coming out of my mouth very well. It's just been a long day. But I really wanted to do the NFL draft coverage, and I just got home from work. That's why we're going on late right after the NFL draft. But anyway, that being the only, and I don't want to call it a black mark, but any kind of hesitation in regards to this just being a perfect program. Otherwise, for the last 7 years, everything has gone just by the book in regards to building a football power, in regards to bringing in the best talent or near the best talent, developing them as well as anyone, having a culture that's built on discipline and hard work, but also fun and family and community and all those things you just outlined. Being able to keep the best or arguably the best defensive coordinator in the nation in the program, and it just feeds on itself now. And guys just want to go there and join.
But according to everybody, we had the easiest schedule in the country, right?
Well, you didn't have the easiest schedule in the country, but you didn't have a hard schedule.
That's what they say, right? We have one of the easier schedules, right?
Well,
I mean, what happens when you go to the playoffs, though? As you know, I played Division I baseball in Charleston, so I mean, baseball is a highly scrutinized sport, and I mean, I can't even tell you how many. I mean, there's half the shelves at GMC. If you take some of that stuff, you will fail an NCAA drug test. I mean, I've been with guys at college that have failed drug tests for taking like over-the-counter GMC products. So you never know what is in those things. So like what they've started to do now is bring them into the universities and actually test them themselves, because one bottle will have things others won't. I mean, so as far as I'm glad you said TVs are not steroids, because Ostarine is not steroids. It's not even close, and a tiny sliver of Ostarine is not going to do anything to a 340-pound man. And they were banned from the playoffs, because when you go to a playoff, whether it's like the regionals like we did or anything like that, everybody gets tested. There's no we test 3 random players. Everybody gets tested, and those players are banned. So if anything, I just think that helped Albert Huggins' stock in the draft.
So Prince.
The combine, they get tested again, and I mean, Dexter Lawrence had no PEDs in his system again,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, I don't know if I call that a scandal, like paying $100 million to players in Miami. Like, I mean, you're paying players to go there. You know what I mean? Like that, I think that's a scandal.
Well, that's pretty much the number one scandal in terms of how it relates to winning. The Jerry Sandusky thing will push that into another category. That's a whole other deal. But when we're just talking about football and gaining an advantage, when you do things to bring kids on campus and sign them, whether that's paying them money or having them entertained by strippers or whatever you need to do or think that you need to do, that is number one.
That was Ole Miss, wasn't it?
That's number one on the blacklist. That was Ole Miss. That was Louisville in basketball.
Well, they had Miami, what was it, the 80s or 90s, where they had they had another scandal where they were taking tests for them or something like that, or they were lowering manipulating test scores.
So that was going to be my second point, is that to me, and this is just an opinion off the top of my head, the worst thing that you can do, again, this is in a football context, is, do unscrupulous things to bring the kids on campus and get them signed. The second thing is to go outside the rules to keep them eligible against the rules. And that would be another thing that Miami's done in the past. Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yes, North Carolina recently. So I was curious, as soon as you mentioned that Clemson had a much criticized schedule last season, I was interested to see what the Voice of College Football ranked their schedule, because, of course, we rank all the schedules each and every year. So I just looked it up, and I ranked Clemson as having the 5th most difficult schedule in the ACC and the number 30 schedule in the country.
I would agree with that. I think our out of season or out of conference games are always tough. We played 2 SEC teams.
Sure, you played.
SEC is the best conference.
Yeah,
anybody who's lying, anybody who says differently is lying. They're the best conference. If you go over a period of time, there's years where the ACC or Big Ten have been better, but over the years, the SEC, I would definitely agree.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else here. I had a list for you on. They didn't have the final 2 picks in there, but I had a list of the draft by conference. I thought you'd be interested in this. Let's see, where's it?
Well, I saw it in the live chat. I mentioned it. Are you talking SEC 9, Big 10, and ACC 7
Yeah,
each?
it was 9, 7, 7,
Yeah.
and then like 3 and 3. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, we had a conversation with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts last night, and he said something that triggered an idea in my head that I thought this might take a little too much research, but I wanted to go through and basically measure NFL draft picks, both the quantity and the quality of the draft pick by school, and take a certain number of years, maybe the last 10 years, and look at it. I also thought he brought something up that gave me another idea for a video where I wanted to compare the preseason rankings and the postseason rankings for all the major teams and see which schools we have overhyped and overrated in the preseason consistently, versus which teams have been underrated consistently.
That's a great one. Yeah, because the SEC too preseason rankings every single year are they're always way up there. Like in 2016, what was it? The ACC was like 9-2 or something in bowl games.
Yeah.
And the SEC was like 3rd, I think.
Yes.
So it all has to do with preseason ranking too. And I get it. The SEC network pulls in the most money for ESPN. So I'm not saying they're not the best conference most years, but there are a lot of years that are tainted by that, by the money. And ACC is finally getting a network this fall. So
yes, they are. The first game is going to be Clemson and Georgia Tech.
Really, I didn't know that.
That's the first game. Yes, I believe it's going to be on a Thursday night, just prior to that weekend. Yep.
Definitely. With that being said, though, I love the work you do, and Alonzo 1219. I love that dude too, man. And hell, for the sake of the ACC, I hope that Miami gets back to the days, that it was without the cheating and all that. And man, I would, we need a competitor, really. It's embarrassing right now. Like we should not have a 4-loss Pitt team in the ACC championship.
Well, actually they had 5 losses, but anyway, you've 7-5. Then they finished 7-7. But anyway, you've heard me probably say on here that there are 2 schools that are key to ACC performance. 2 schools that are critical, because if you look at the rest of the conference, there's a definite ceiling for everyone else. And obviously Clemson's way at the top. And then you've got everybody else, almost everybody else. If you really analyze it, every other school in the ACC, other than these 2 schools, their ceiling's almost identical. But these 2 schools have an opportunity to break out and make the ACC dominant. I don't want to say again, because I don't know when the ACC ever was dominant, but these 2 schools are critical. Which ones do you think they are?
If I had to guess off the top of my head, I would say Florida State Miami.
Bam, there you go.
Or Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I can. They would be the one school. Yes, they have proven it in the past with Frank Beamer that they can be a national power. They would be the other school that's done it. But everybody else, North Carolina, way back, Lawrence Taylor days. But basically, everybody else is a top. Their ceiling's pretty much 8-4. Now I know Syracuse technically went 10-3 this year, but you know what I mean. The rest of them are like middling programs. They're fringe, not even fringe top 25.
Would agree that right now the most important thing is we need to support Willie Taggart. He needs to keep doing what he's doing and keep Florida State where they're at. So #support Willie Taggart.
There you go. Yeah, keep him going, and that's kind of like the campaign that Ohio State fans would say that they would want to do everything possible to keep Brady Hoke in his job. So we got a guy on the live chat here. I've never seen his handle, Vodka Drinker. He's asking if I'm happy or disappointed. First time here. I didn't really know that I was happy or disappointed. If anything, I'm. Is he a good guy?
He's from Pigskin Pete's channel.
All right. Well, Vodka Drinker, you're doing a good thing and making a good choice following Pigskin Pete because he's a class guy, does a great job. But also you can lock it in here. We talk college football constantly and cover everybody. And I just want to say it's the best discussion, debate, and analysis in college football, bar none. So Vodka Drinker, you've got a home right here if you so choose.
Oh, he'll be here. He's a good dude. What did you think about this Daniel Jones pick at number 6? Was that not crazy?
Crazy. Yeah, that's about what I would put on it. And maybe he'll shock us.
I mean, I've watched this guy he started there for what, 3 years now? Dude,
Yes.
I mean, I've never been impressed with the guy at
No.
all. And I mean, not like Duke had a terrible line or terrible offense, really. It's just, man, I don't know what the Giants were thinking there.
Yeah, the first time I really looked at Daniel Jones as an NFL prospect was during the bowl game. I'm watching the bowl game, and they just started talking about Daniel Jones projected toward an NFL selection, but more of a second or third rounder. And, yeah, nothing really stands out as being an outstanding, a number 6 pick in the draft at quarterback. I just there was something that happened with Dwayne Haskins because from the last day of the season until a couple of weeks ago, he was locked in to New York. And then I kept hearing these rumors that they lost their love for Dwayne Haskins for some reason. And they just had it in their minds that they needed a quarterback, and they have selected him.
Interesting. I know the same thing happened with Sweat, too. There were a bunch of characters there. I know there's some on record and some off the record. Apparently.
So did you happen to see the video that they showed?
I did not.
Okay, so this is what happened, and I want to get this straight, so I'm not going to say anything I don't know, but this is how I understand it from listening to.
The one that hit the girl or whatever?
Yes. So if you just watch that video.
I'm thinking about
Jeffrey Simmons.
DeAndre Baker. That's who it is. Baker.
Okay.
Baker. He was projected top 8 pick.
What did he do?
Apparently, according to Uncle Lunan, he just sat out the bowl game and just left the team, didn't even say anything. Like, he just had a bunch of character issues. I mean, just like quitting on your team, didn't say anything to the coaches.
So,
Along those lines.
yeah, I didn't hear any of that, but still got drafted in the first round.
All you heard was top 10 pick for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the best defensive backs.
Absolutely. He had a couple of huge plays against Florida that turned that game around.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Prince.
What do you think about Kyler Murray? Think Kyler Murray's going to make it?
Man, that's a great question. Boy, what an experiment that's going to be. Plus, you put him together with a coach that has no coaching experience at the NFL level and was not even a successful coach at the college level. So I pointed this out a number of times. This fascinates me, mystifies me, that when I think Texas Tech football, I think middle of the road, Big 12, get your ticket to the Holiday Bowl at very best. Texas Bowl, this is what Texas Tech does. They go to the worst bowl games. They finish in 6th and 7th place in the Big 12. But if you go back and look at Mike Leach's time at Texas Tech, he built that program to a point where they finished ranked in the top 25, 5 of his last 6 seasons, and he won 65% of his game at Texas Tech. Then Tommy Tuberville was there for 2 years, so just kind of a holding period. And obviously he wasn't quite, he'd kind of lost his fastball and wasn't too interested in recruiting or anything. But they hand the keys to Cliff Kingsbury, and my goodness, his record in conference play off the top of my head is something like 16-29. I believe that's the exact record, actually, 16-29, and he's under 500 overall. And Texas Tech isn't exactly loading up with Ohio State and Alabama on non-conference play. You know, they're playing Lamar and Sam Houston State and Rice, and so they got 3 gimmies out of conference. And once in a while, they'll play Houston or Arizona or somebody like that, but they never play anybody good out of conference. A couple games with Arkansas, a couple games with Ole Miss, but again, nobody ranked. And they still can't win more than 5 games and get to a bowl game under Cliff Kingsbury in recent years. He's gone 5-7 3 consecutive years. And he gets an NFL job. I don't get it.
You know what I think it is? I think they're trying to gun for the next Sean McVay, and they're pushing it. You know what I mean? They're getting desperate for the next
That could be it. That's a good call.
Yeah. That's what they're doing, and I mean, I just think they had a big swing and a miss right here. But
what's
I'll let you go, Mark, man. We
Sure.
always have good logical and statistical conversations. So, man, I appreciate everything you do.
All right, Prince. I appreciate the support. You have a good night.
You too.
Prince, 6'1", who commented for a long time, would comment to the videos and have some great things to say, and then we finally got to chat the other night. And he's called for another time here. So I see a number of people here in the live chat room for the first time. Swampy McGee, we've not seen him for quite a long time, but he's letting me know that Kingsbury went 19-35 in the Big 12, which is pretty close on my guesstimation there. Best record 4-5 twice. Maybe he just didn't like recruiting. But even if you look at Texas Tech football over the past couple seasons, if anything, the defense improved and they still didn't win more games. But anyway, we will see if the experiment works. But I cannot come up with this answer. Can you think of an unsuccessful college football coach who has been successful in the NFL? Now, it's tough enough to find a college coach that was great at the collegiate level that turned out to be a great coach in the NFL. Pete Carroll comes to mind, of course. But we can think of all sorts of great college football coaches who failed at the next level. And I don't want to call Nick Saban a failure, but he didn't succeed at the next level, and then he bailed and went to Alabama. So he certainly didn't succeed. He was 2 games under 500 at Miami with the Dolphins in 2 years. Luke Holtz had a great college career, of course, most notably at Notre Dame, but also at Arkansas, South Carolina, and North Carolina State, Minnesota. He was a bust with the Jets in the NFL, and we could go on and on. Chuck Fairbanks had a great run with Colorado back in the 70s, and he was okay. He had some decent New England Patriots teams in the 70s as well. But to think of a bad college football coach who succeeded in the NFL, come up with that guy. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't. As Vodka Drinker says here, Cliff Kingsbury was spoiled with Mansell at A&M and Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. His system ain't special. He's had special players at the quarterback position. You know, you kind of wonder, and this would be a good question for our guy, Justin Tatavio, that I've had on a number of times recently to break down X's and O's. Coaches are copycats. A system hits, and it hits hard, and it hits well, and then the sharing of information and the ability to gather game footage and dissect it and run metrics and do all the things that we can do in the modern age makes it easier for these coaches to catch up to the innovators more quickly. Back in Tom Landry's day, let's say. Now, Tom Landry, if you know little about the NFL and maybe just know the the guy that had the hat on that went to the Super Bowl a number of times for the Dallas Cowboys, 5 times, you may want to know that he invented the shotgun in the NFL. He invented the 4-3 defense. He invented motion in the NFL. So he was smart enough to look at the rule book and think, you know what, there's nothing that states here that we can't move guys before the snap and shift them and run them in motion and confuse people. So he did all those things. My point being is then when he innovated, and other guys did too, of course, that it would take the rest of the league years to catch up because they didn't have the information. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have all this information that we currently have. But now, when Chip Kelly innovates and takes over at Oregon, installs an offense with warp speed, well, within 3 or 4 years, all sorts of people can do it. And who has the advantage? Well, the big schools with the big brands and the big recruits, they typically take over and squash the little guys that are innovative who maybe gained an edge for a half season or a year and a half. And that's kind of the point I'm making, or actually extending the point made by somebody on the live chat concerning Vodka Drinker, concerning Cliff Kingsbury, that really his offense is nothing special. In this day and age, how many coaches out there and coaching staffs know how to run a spread air raid type offense? It's a dime a dozen now. Urban Meyer, when he first implemented his spread formation with Utah, he implemented some concepts that had not been seen for years and years and years. And really, the spread offense itself, from a running formation standpoint, was brilliant because it basically took us back to the 1930s because it reasoned that you don't need, if you have the quarterback in play as a runner, then on running plays previous, when it's handed to the running back and everybody knows that the running back, the tailback, is getting the football, the quarterback's useless. And now you're playing 10 on 11. But when we institute a mobile quarterback and run the ball out of a spread formation, well, we now have an 11 on 11 situation. And that's how offenses were run back in the 30s and 40s. And they just brought it back. And so Urban Meyer's initial push as an elite coach with Utah was from an innovative standpoint. Then later with Ohio State, I don't know that he was really doing anything that everybody else wasn't doing at that point. He just recruited the best players. And so he just won on talent. But I don't know that there was anything special about the Ohio State offense over the last 7 years under Urban Meyer. All right. Vodka Drinker, the NFL is all about flanking a defense and getting numbers on defensive players. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. It's about spacing, flanking, yes, getting playmakers in space. And there's an interesting dynamic with linebackers now at the collegiate and NFL levels. First at the collegiate level over the last 10 years or so, in which you used to have 3 linebackers out there, and the middle guy was a run stuffer, and the 2 guys on the outside had to be a little bit mobile and pick up backs out of the backfield. Now these guys have to play in space, and they got to run. And it's more of a component that you need a skill set to run and get sideline to sideline than it is to be, to be able to hold up against the run, which sometimes makes teams like Wisconsin awfully effective when they've got an NFL offensive line and they've got a James White or a Monte Ball or a Melvin Gordon in the backfield, and they can just pound these defenses that aren't used to seeing that, and they hold on to the football and they're pretty effective. But the rest of these teams, yeah, linebacker, that position has changed considerably in regards to what's expected of these guys playing in space. All right. Dennis Wilson, another late night chat, Mark Rogers. This is what it comes down to, Dennis. What can I say? I worked until after midnight, and I thought we got to strike up the live stream, and I knew that before, and I sent out the notifications. Hey, if we want to talk NFL draft day 1, then we're going to have to do it late. Can I say they needed me at the worldwide leader? All right. The key is playing defensive quick twitch change of direction guys at linebacker. Exactly. Swampy McGee, New York Times. Tampa Bay had targeted LSU linebacker Devin White all along as he fills the team's biggest need at inside linebacker, but the Bucs likely sweated out the last few minutes trying to decide if they should take Josh Allen. D. Rev Lee, Lincoln Riley and Bryles, meaning Kendall, are the best offensive minds right now in college football. Well, I can't necessarily disagree with that. I also couldn't necessarily explain why. I heard Lincoln Riley interviewed tonight. Really, the only thing that he stated, and he didn't want to give away the secret sauce, but in regards to his success, was that he keeps it simple. Or he was asked, when NFL head coaches and coaches come to your practices in the spring to check you guys out, what are they surprised by? And he said, how simplistic our offense is. Cheryl was hoping that Paris Campbell would go in the first round. And if Steve Hellwagon is the gentleman's name, Steve Hellwagon. And I told Prince a few minutes ago, I said, anything that comes out of my mouth now at 2 o'clock in the morning after working all day, I am not going to be blamed for or take any type of hit for. Let's try that again. Steve Hellwagon was on the show last night, of course, and he made mention that with 2 number 1 draft selections that Ohio State would catch USC with the most all time. And had Paris Campbell been selected in the first round, of course, Ohio State would have surpassed USC all time, 83-82. But it currently stands and will until 2020, Ohio State 82, USC 82 in all-time first-round draft selections. Swampy telling us that Fox Sports, former Oregon coach Chip Kelly got off to a hot start with the Eagles. Yes, back-to-back 10-6 seasons in years 1 and 2 looked promising, but once Kelly wrestled control of personnel, he doomed himself with a series of moves. Okay. Oh, somebody's arguing with Cheryl. What's going on here? Roger Shaw has not watched the NFL for 2 to 3 years. Roger Shaw, Roger, this is the first time I've ever seen your handle at MarkRogersTV. Welcome to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. We love having you here. Welcome. You found your home for college football debate, discussion, and analysis right here. Don't subscribe. Don't do it yet. Check out the videos. Check out what we do on a day-to-day basis. We deliver. We covered 31 teams in the spring, and that's not one report per team. That's multiple reports per team, 31 teams during spring football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis online. So, Roger, we welcome you. Please check out the videos. Hopefully, you'll like what you see, and you will subscribe, share the videos, like, and comment. D. Rev Lee talking about Larry Fitzgerald, who can't play anymore. Really? He's not as good as he used to be, but... Swampy talking about Cliff Kingsbury winning 1 bowl game. That was in 2013 Holiday Bowl. That was a big upset, actually. I think that was his first season. That was against Arizona State, who was a 2-touchdown favorite. Sean Taylor. Not the Sean Taylor. Sean Taylor. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. Okay, I'm going to answer the call, but I've got to do this. Got to do this. Welcome to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Sean Taylor, we appreciate you stopping by. And please check out the videos, check out the channel, and we hope that you have found a home for college football analysis right here. Now, if you're new to the channel and you check out analysis from me in particular, so you're going to see some videos where we bring on guests and we talk their particular team, their particular conference, and I let them go and grind it down and really break down their team. I defer to them, and I rarely argue with them. But you're going to see analysis from me, and you're going to see a little bit of cutting-edge analysis, maybe outside the groupthink box of college football analysts. So you're going to get some college football playoff ideas and matchup ideas and scheduling ideas and some thoughts that you're not going to hear anywhere else that might be a little unconventional, may seem not quite right, but just give me some time. Listen, think it through, let it filter in, and we'll have a good time here. All right. D-Mac. I'm not going to give you the big open because I think I've seen your handle before, but thanks for joining. And if I haven't, D-Mac, certainly let me know that I have not given you the big Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, greeting, because I will do it. I think we have covered just about everything in regards to the live chat here. Logan Crippen would like to talk on the phone. Here you go, Logan. 860-325-3687. And you're welcome, Sean. Thank you for joining. And Logan, understand, as the old timers here on the chat will get sick of hearing this, that that yes, I will get this right, and I will upgrade the production quality, and we will have the number on the screen with some advertising, some sponsorships to put some money in the coffers would be good. Number right there. All right, here we go. I believe this is going to be Logan. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Logan.
Hey, Logan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. A bit of a tip for you. Please turn down the sound because you're hearing me live and you're hearing me about 10 seconds delayed there on your laptop or your phone. That's okay. Don't worry about it. How you doing tonight?
Good, you?
I'm doing well.
That's good. I was just wondering, what team do you think Drew Lock will be going to?
Drew Lock. Well, I was asked about the quarterbacks a few minutes ago by Deep Barat, and I made mention that I'm not an NFL draft guy, so I don't follow. I love the NFL, and there was a point in my life for about 25 years in which I could have told you anything possible about the NFL. I watched and covered the NFL like a few people, but that day is gone by. So I watch the NFL on Sunday afternoon just to enjoy the games, but I'm not an NFL guy that I'm doing this all the time with college football. So I have not studied the NFL teams to know who is looking for a quarterback. I talked about Drew Lock and what I think of Drew Lock, but I didn't talk to about which team would be a good fit. Now, have you looked at that? Is there a team that you think he'll go to?
I've done a little research. There's a couple teams looking at him right now. One of the teams is actually Miami.
Okay, that would make sense.
And the other team is, I don't know why, but Tennessee wants him. The Titans.
Sure. Well, some fans would tell you that they're not real happy with Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
He's okay.
Yeah. Well, man, Marcus Mariota is a pretty good player, but
sure.
It's getting to that time.
Yeah, so his last season was what, 2014? So he was 2015. So he's played 2015 through 18. He's played 4 seasons, and he's a decent player. He's mobile, but he's not an outstanding quarterback. He's not a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite college football team?
Oh, my favorite college football team? I'm going to have to, it's kind of hard, honestly. I'll have to go with Clemson, honestly.
Okay. So you're more of an NFL fan?
More both, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I do college and I do NFL.
So you don't really root hard for anyone. You just enjoy the game, sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clemson. All right. Well, it's kind of easy to be a Clemson fan these days.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a Clemson fan.
Oh, okay. It just sounded like you weren't real sure.
Yeah. It was either them or my other team, Missouri, MU.
So why Missouri?
Well, I live in Missouri.
Okay. Okay. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. But growing up, my dad's always liked the Clemson, so it just stuck on me.
Okay.
Yeah. What's his name? Nick Bosa.
Yes.
He had a really good season this year. Well, last year.
Yeah, in 2017.
Yeah.
He only played 3 games this year.
He only played 3 games?
Only played 3 games. He got hurt in the TCU game. He hurt his abdominal, his core, and he sat out the rest of the year.
Oh, I did not know anything about that.
Yes.
Well, I kind of got to get off the phone here.
Absolutely.
It's so late.
All right, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. You too.
Have a good night. All right. Yes, Nick Bosa. Still the number 2 overall selection despite missing almost the entire 2018 season. All right, we got DMAC. The draft process is so interesting in that we all know that it's an inexact thing. Look back a few years, especially quarterbacks. How many guys would have liked just never made it? All you need to do, to DMAC's point, is take any year of the NFL draft and go back at least a couple of years, because guys need to have a track record, and just go through the picks. And then you'll realize, man, that guy was picked 4th. He's awful. Or he doesn't play. This guy was picked 44th. He's a superstar. Inexact science. Now, let's also understand that it's not just an inexact science in regards to projecting the talent from one level to the next. It's also about fit and coaching and development, just like it is on the college level. So we will never know about those collegiate players who were superstars in high school that turned out to be busts, that sure, it's on them, but many of them, I'm sure, and it's mere speculation, but I don't think it's a stretch to say many of them, had they gone to another school with a better fit in terms of scheme, coaching development, maybe they got into bad habits or didn't have the type leadership around them at the other school that, had they gone somewhere else, might have developed. Same thing in the NFL. If Tom Brady would have been selected, not by the New England Patriots, but selected by the Jacksonville Jaguars, where would he be now? Joe Montana could have been selected, was very close to being selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were an awful franchise through the 80s, into the 90s. It wasn't until the mid-90s that with Mike Allstott and Warwick Dunn and Trent Dilfer and that great defense with Warren Sapp, that Tampa Bay got good in like 96, 97. So for all that time, Tampa Bay was awful in the 1980s. And Joe Montana could have been their quarterback. Now, what would have happened? Either Joe Montana would have elevated that franchise, or that franchise would have crushed Joe Montana. We don't know. We'll never know. I guess we would think a little bit of both. Maybe Tampa Bay would have been a first-round playoff team, but never would have won championships like Joe Montana did with the San Francisco 49ers. All right. True. Fit, very seldom spoken about factor. Dabo Sweeney talks about it all the time. You're right, but it is rarely discussed across the board. Just look at the recruiting rankings in college football. They mean a ton. Deep Barat and I were just talking about it, and I was making the point, look at the recruiting rankings, and then the best conference is the SEC. They get the best recruits, and then Who churns out the best NFL draft selections? The SEC. Okay, that's in mass volume. But if you look at particular fits, what did Bill Snyder do at Kansas State? Man, look at his coaching record, especially his first stint at Kansas State. I think we forget that Kansas State was regularly finishing in the top 10 in the nation for a 6 to 8 year span. And in a broader scope than that, they were finishing in the top 25 on a regular basis for 15 years under Bill Snyder. He wasn't recruiting top 10 to 15 classes. He was recruiting classes in the 70s and turning them into top 10 teams. How? Wisconsin and Michigan State have done that on a regular basis. Stanford, where is Stanford in the recruiting rankings? 35th, 32nd, 42nd, 29th. Where are they in the national standings at the end of the year? Typically in the top 15, with a number of top 5 finishes under Jim Harbaugh and then David Shaw. Wisconsin, the same thing. Michigan State, the same thing. From 2010 to 2017, how many times did Michigan State finish in the top 10 in the nation? A number of times. They went to a college football playoff. They won a Cotton Bowl. They won a Rose Bowl. They had a number of one-loss seasons with recruiting classes that were 35th, 41st, 29th. All right, Kevin Boateng is asking me, name the top 2 defensive players taken in next year's draft. I say Chase Young and Grant Delpit. Oh my goodness, I have no idea. Deeper Rod, you're taking one Stanford class. So I don't mean to blow off your question there, Kevin, but I don't know who the top. We're just finishing up a draft right now. Was Baker Mayfield supposed to be the number 1 draft selection last year, a year prior? He wasn't even supposed to be the number 1 pick a month prior, let alone trying to project him as the number 1 overall selection a year prior. He wasn't even supposed to be a first rounder a year prior. So in no way am I selecting Chase Young or Grant Delpit. I would have to rack my brain and sit here for hours to give you a quality response. Those are 2 exceptional players, no doubt. But unless you were listening to somebody tonight or reading something where they were already projecting the 2020 NFL draft, and they already had that information. So, Deep Barat, your point is well taken about Stanford having a top 20 recruiting class and not making a top 20 ranking at the end of the year. But you got to understand something. I'm using like 10 years data. You're using 1 year data. And you also have to understand that that team that did not finish and failed to finish in the top 20, they were not comprised of one recruiting class that finished in the top 20. That's a roster of 5 recruiting classes, generally 4 with a spillover of red shirts into 5 years. So you can't make that direct correlation. You're talking about freshmen that have little impact on our season. So you can't say, well, Stanford recruited a top 20 recruiting class, but they didn't turn it into a top 20 team. Well, that team was comprised of 5 recruiting classes. We got Cheryl pointing out that Dwayne Haskins was the first Big Ten quarterback selected in the first round since 1995 after Swampy McGee said the same thing. So let's keep in mind that, yes, this is where there's a difference between NFL projection and NFL performance. Kerry Collins was a good quarterback, especially with the Giants, led the Giants to 1 Super Bowl. They were shellacked by the Baltimore Ravens 34-7. And I've mentioned to a number of you that I really followed the NFL, and I still love the NFL, but I really followed it. So case in point, 2000 Super Bowl, Baltimore and the Giants, 34-7 game. Kerry Collins in that game he threw for 111 yards and 4 interceptions, no touchdowns, and I believe his final numbers were, I used to know it, 12 for 29 or 12 for 31, something like that. Somebody could check me on that. I believe I'm extremely close. At one point, I would have nailed it. All right.
Walter Football 2020 mock draft. Tua goes first to Miami. Deeper Rot, Mark. Stanford was the top 4 team under Andrew Luck since 2011. Stanford hasn't achieved anything. 2015, Stanford, Pac-12 champions, won the Rose Bowl. 2012, Pac-12 champions won the Rose Bowl. If you guys are going to argue with me, you got to bring the facts. Okay. All right. Okay, Deeper Rot. No, stop it. No. Stanford has not been average since 2011. All right. This is average. Stanford, since 2011, they've been average. David Shaw's 82 and 26. How can they be average? There's another. Boom. Look me up. Check me. David Shaw, 82, 26 at Stanford. I didn't have time to look that up. It's just up there. All right. This is average. Now, you guys, we need to be accurate when we challenge the voice of college football here. So I have said that Stanford's been an excellent program, whatever the original comment made, since 2011. Stanford's gone, and not counting 2011, starting in 2012, 12 and 2, 11 and 3, 8 and 5, 12 and 2, 10 and 3, 9 and 5, 9 and 4. That's average. 9 and 4, won the Sun Bowl, finished in the top 20. 9 and 5, lost the Alamo Bowl to TCU. 10 and 3, won the Sun Bowl, finished in the top 15. 12 and 2, won the Rose Bowl, finished in the top 5. 8 and 5, won the Foster Farms Bowl, finished in the top 25. 11 and 3, lost the Rose Bowl, finished in the top 10. 12 and 2, won the Rose Bowl, finished in the top 5. That's average. Okay. Let's not be silly. Come on. My man Timba Wolf, the other day, this was when I got a little fired up and really responded to some crazy, stupid comments. Said, this is the Mark I like to see. So you may see this Mark a little bit more often where I'm like, okay, no. We're not going to let that slide. Stanford is a good program, not nationally relevant. Okay, Deeper Rod, again, it depends. You throw out terms that are vague, nationally relevant. If Stanford's not nationally relevant, Texas is not nationally relevant. Who's been better since your magical date of 2011? It's not even close. It's not even close. Deeper Rod, 0 BCS or college football playoff appearances. Huh? What? 0 BCS. Oh, you're talking about BCS championship games. We're measuring relevance just simply based on making college football playoff appearances. Okay. So Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Oregon, Michigan State, Washington are relevant. That's it. USC's not relevant. Texas, not relevant. Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame just became relevant. Barely. Miami, not relevant. Florida State, well, I guess they were relevant in 2014, barely. Tennessee, LSU, not relevant. Texas A&M, not relevant.
Nobody else relevant. Florida, not relevant. We've got like 6 teams in the country that are relevant. If that's your criteria, that's your criteria. I tend to take these arguments a little bit from a broader perspective, not taking one little statistic and saying, you're not relevant, you didn't go to a college football playoff. Well, I'm going to sit here right now and think, you know what? In the grand scheme of things, who's more relevant, USC or Michigan State? Oh, Michigan State made a playoff. USC didn't. Michigan State's relevant. USC not relevant at all. Okay. Stanford not relevant. Oregon relevant because they made a playoff. Okay. If that's your criteria, I think it's rather weak and thin. Got to take a whole lot more into consideration than just that. Deeper rot. This is the last time I'm going to address Deeper Rot specifically because some of his arguments are a bit silly. Because you need to be consistent. You're not consistent. Sometimes you're telling me that to be relevant, you need to win a national championship like Texas A&M in 1939. Other times you're telling me to get to a BCS championship game or a college football playoff is being relevant. Michigan State has done better than Stanford this decade. You may want to look that up. It's close. You may want to check that. You don't want to be wrong again. I am going to just about guarantee that Stanford has a better record this decade than Michigan State. Stanford football has a better record since 2010 than Michigan State. It's close, but you can't. You talk about two programs that are very comparable. You can't say Michigan State's relevant, Stanford's not relevant. Either they're both relevant or neither one's relevant. If you're going to take it to the Alabama-Ohio State level, then neither one of them's relevant. But if you're going to say teams that are competitive and contend for championships on a regular, Stanford is not relevant. Again, I'm going to say if you compete for championships on a regular basis, then you're relevant. And if you're Stanford, then you compete for more Pac-12 championships than anybody in the conference consistently. Consistently. The Pac-12 championship game started in 2011, and Stanford has participated in more Pac-12 championship games, I guarantee, than anyone. 1, 2, 3, 4. Washington, 2. Oregon, 2. USC, 2. Arizona State, 1. Utah, 1. Colorado, 1. Arizona, 1. UCLA, 2. I heard a lot of 2s. Nobody with 3. Stanford with 4. 4. Stanford's been to 4 Pac-12 championship games. Nobody else has been more than 2. And Stanford has won 3 of those 4. Since 2011, Stanford has won the Pac-12 3 times. Washington 2, Oregon 2, USC 1. Those are Pac-12 championships since 2011. Stanford has the most championship game appearances. They have the best record in the championship game. Therefore, they have the best and most championships. And I guarantee they have the best record in the conference since 2011. It would be close with Oregon. But certainly those two have the best record in the conference. It's not even close because Washington was not good before 2015 and USC's been uneven. So you got the best record in your conference for the last 8 years. You've won the most championships and you've been to the most championship games and you finished in the top 25 and the top 10 more than anybody, but you're not relevant. Okay. The person that I hope just heard this rant more than anyone would be my guy Prince. But I think he's off the line because I think he would have enjoyed that. So I'll have to tell Prince that the next time we talk. I had to put somebody else in their place. All right. Deep Rot, the college football playoff is a selection process. And because you make it one time, you're suddenly relevant. Again, the relevant teams in the country, according to your standard, are Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Oregon, Florida State, Michigan State. Those are all the relevant programs. The irrelevant programs are Texas, TCU, USC, Stanford, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Miami. LSU's irrelevant. Texas A&M's irrelevant. Auburn's irrelevant. Okay. Doesn't make any sense. All right. Yes, Deep Rot, thank you. That's the most intelligent thing you've said since you got off the phone. Michigan State and Stanford are comparable. They are very comparable. Yes. Stanford's been more successful, though. I just listed that Stanford has the best record in the conference, the most championship games, the most championship wins, the most Pac-12 championships, the most top 25 and top 10 finishes in the Pac-12 since 2011. Michigan State cannot state any of those things in the Big Ten. All right. Swampy McGee, Pro Football Focus, best available 2019 NFL Draft prospects. Still available heading into day 2, Byron Murphy, Washington cornerback. Greedy Williams, cornerback, LSU. We didn't have the run on cornerbacks that we typically do. Cornerback, like defensive end, edge rusher, and left tackle, are prime positions in the NFL. And typically we've got to run on corners because they got to cover all those fleet receivers. Not this year, though. Eli, Stanford plays in an easier conference. Yes, today they play in an easier conference. Correct. You are right. The Big Ten is better than the Pac-12. You want to go back to 2015 or 2014 or 2013, 11, 12, that could be argued, or in some cases, it couldn't be argued because the Pac-12 was better. So the Pac-12 has not been inferior for that entire time in which I'm talking. Deep Barat, again, the Big Ten is better than the Pac-12 today. Not necessarily in 2015 or 2013 or 2011. All right. Jesse Sullivan, out of nowhere. Troy played Clemson very well 2 years ago. Yeah, they did. It's a one-score game. LSU lost to Troy. Jesse Sullivan, welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We appreciate you jumping on the line and would like to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. Trey Wingo. Trey, I appreciate so much that you have been preparing for the NFL draft. You worked all night and I'm sure all day preparing for the NFL draft and the production tonight. And you hosted the show for the entire time. And now it is 2:31 in the morning Eastern time and you're with us. Trey, thank you. Trey Wingo. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's great to have you. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. Eli has topped me a million times over in making the most intelligent comment of the night. The college football playoff is stupid. It's an improvement over the BCS, but it is stupid. And yes, Steve Barat, getting away from our previous argument / discussion. It's a good debate, and I hope you guys always appreciate it. Don't take offense, but I'm going to correct people when they're wrong, and a lot of it's not correction. It's just you've got an opinion and a perspective. I've got one. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. Other things are obviously factual. We can look up who's got a better record, Michigan State or Stanford. But it's got to be taken into context. The point I was going to make is I thought that you made a good point just in terms of it being intriguing over the next, hopefully, 10 to 15 years to see Dwayne Haskins playing against the New York Giants. RLB Laney, okay, dude, is it conference championships, national championships, or playoff appearances? I don't know who he's, I believe he's going back to Deep Rock. All right, everyone, it's been a good time. I'll let you know that, again, if you love college football, this is your place to be. And I would hope that everybody watching currently and then all the folks that are watching will be watching later once this video posts have subscribed to the channel. And if you have not pulled the trigger to subscribe to the channel, watch the videos. Keep track of us for a day after day after day after day after day, and you will see that we cover college football like nobody else. Best discussion, debate, and analysis in the game. Please, if you're shopping on Amazon or anybody in your household it shops on Amazon, get them the link that you can find in the description section of any of the videos. Just enter Amazon using that link and you help support the channel. That's all you need to do to support the channel. Like, comments, subscribe, share the videos. If you're a Florida State fan and we talk Florida State football, grab those videos and share them. You have social media acquaintances and influence that I don't have. You'll get it out to people that I'll never touch. So I appreciate that. We covered 31 teams during the spring. I would love to have gotten to all 68 in the Power 5 plus more. Actually, I believe the count would be 32 because I forgot to count UCF. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. Tomorrow, I've got a conversation. Let's see. We're talking Georgia football at noon. That will not be live, but expect to see those segments later. What else do we have going on? So Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts came up with 2 great ideas for videos that he wasn't anticipating being good ideas for videos, but he said something that led me to think, okay, it would be great to compare preseason rankings versus postseason rankings to see which schools have been most consistently overrated and underrated, let's say in the last 10 years or the last 20 years. Also, NFL draft selections by college, who has had the most impact in the NFL draft, both from a quantity standpoint and a quality standpoint. I am ranking schedules. I have all 68 Power 5 schedules right here. I have them divided by conference. I have ranked them within each conference. I have them all marked up with notes. The toughest stretches. South Carolina plays Alabama, Mizzou, and Kentucky back to back to back. They play Georgia, Florida, Tennessee back to back to back. They may have to face 3, maybe the top 3 teams in the country in Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia, potentially. 5 of the top 10 teams in 2018. Their SEC Western Division schedule includes Texas A&M and Alabama. Their non-conference games are against Clemson, North Carolina, and App State. How good is South Carolina's schedule? It's mighty brutal. So anyway, all 68 schedules right here. And you talk about making yourself bug-eyed, trying to work on something and compare schedules. It's tough enough within the conferences, but then to take a Pac-12 schedule and compare it to a Big 12 schedule. So I get slammed for this often, but I love doing it, and people are going to argue with me about the toughness of schedules. But hey, this is what we do. And along with this, I will also be projecting the records of all these teams. South Carolina looks like, oh boy, they're going to lose 2, 3, 4, 6-6. South Carolina. There you go. Yeah. I'll put a little bit more thought in it, but those will not be my official 2019 predictions, in which, of course, I had to point out to DeAndre the other day that I did select Clemson to win the national championship last year. I picked Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State in the playoff. But consider that Ohio State could have been selected for the playoff. Certainly, they had the credentials that were as good as Oklahoma. And that Georgia had a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter against Alabama to win the SEC and go to the playoff. I was that close to getting it perfect. And what else are we working on? What else do you guys want? Oh, now that spring practice is generally over, I just remembered a specific request. Somebody out there loves Colorado football, and they asked me to cover the Colorado spring game this Saturday. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cover it. I will have a Colorado spring game report coming up this Saturday or Sunday. All right. And then now that spring practice is basically over and the spring games are over, once I get these schedule previews out and the schedule rankings, I'm going to rank the schedules 1 through 68 and project all the records. I'm going to start on player rankings. I'm going to rank the top 10 players in the nation at each position. I'm going to rank the top 10 players in each position in each conference. And yes, I kill almost to 10,000 subs. I really wanted to make that happen by May 1st, but I've got a I generally pick up during the off season about 500 to 600 subs per month. But I've got to pick up close to 300 in the last 5 days of the month here to get there. So I didn't quite reach my goal, but I would like to do much better than that. But I appreciate that I kill that you pointed that out. I would love to blow past the 10,000 mark, and maybe we can have a big celebration for 10,000. How about that? We'll have a big celebration for 10,000. I don't know what we'll do. Maybe I'll put up 2 balloons. That'll be the big get a cake. We can have cake. What are my thoughts on Mark Richt? Oh boy, I've talked a lot of Mark Richt through the years, vodka drinker. Let's not get into that tonight, but believe me, I have dissertations. If you want to just knock yourself out on college football coverage, you could lock into my channel and watch them all night. There's 7,000 videos there. I have talked about Mark Richt's career at Georgia. I have both defended it and knocked it, depending on your perspective. But I've put it into, I think most people would be surprised if they looked at Mark Richt's record at Georgia year by year and looked at the final ranking. I think most people would be surprised how consistently they were in the top 10 in the nation at the end of the year. I believe 8 of his 15 years they finished in the top 10 in the nation, and more like 12 out of 15 in the top 25. But couldn't win the brass ring. Yes, vodka. South Carolina's schedule. Georgia, Florida, LSU. No. Yeah, it's getting late. South Carolina's schedule: Alabama, Texas A&M, Clemson, Georgia, Florida, on and on and on. Yeah, it's tough. Word of the day: irrelevant. Good call, Jesse. Irrelevant. That's it. All right, folks, it's been a good time, and I just want to encourage you to do whatever you can to help us build the channel, and I hope I deliver what we believe is good content. We try to do that. When am I going live again? Deep or rot? Well, we've got the NFL draft tomorrow night. Maybe I'll go live tomorrow night. I don't have to work. I'm off Friday and Saturday, so I believe we'll go live at some point tomorrow. I'm definitely going to be covering the NFL draft. Yeah, I definitely do better numbers during the season than I do during the off season. That only makes sense. But my numbers are still about 3 to 5 times higher in views, comments, and subscribers gained than they were at this point last year. So we expect that to continue. But I probably, if you slice the year into 2 parts, split it down the middle, 6 months and 6 months, every year I do 3 to 4 times as much traffic during the final half of the year from July 1st through the end of the year than I do the first half of the year for obvious reasons. The build up to the season, then the season. And I believe I have made helium balloons. Yes, Jess, and I'll be able to, suck them up and sound funny. Anything to go viral. Juggle 10 mini helmets for 10,000 subs. That's pretty good. I couldn't even juggle 2 helmets. Which reminds me, Tulsa's coming in Iowa. I know they won the helmet contest, the vote, so I got to get them up there. All right. So I just wanted to mention that I believe I've made the decision that since the Miami, Florida game has been moved a week earlier to August 24th, and besides the Arizona-Hawaii game that I know that most of you are just can't wait to see, since that's the only other FBS game out there on that particular weekend, August 24th, Miami, Florida, going to the game. Going to the game, so we're going to do it up big. I'll have my new equipment. We'll get down there. We'll have interviews with people. I'll circulate. And Zoe tells me I'm going to grab 1,000 subs down there easy. Those would not be sub sandwiches. Those would be subscribers. So we'll see. All right. I just keep hanging on here, don't I? I think we've done enough damage. Thank you so much for joining our instant analysis of day 1 of the NFL draft. We'll be back sometime tomorrow with recorded segments or possibly live, depending. Just watch your notifications and we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. Cheryl, you buy the Army helmet or just vote and vote and vote and vote and vote and vote and vote, 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 vote. I didn't put a limit on it. It's a Chicago vote. You can vote as many times as you'd like and throw up the Army helmet. But it's going to be Tulsa and the Iowa Hawkeyes. We'll see y'all later. Thanks so much for the support. I appreciate it more than you know. See you soon.